Hallmark. A hallmark is an official mark or series of marks struck on items made of metal, mostly to certify the content of noble metals, such as platinum, gold, silver and in some nations, palladium. In a more general sense, the term hallmark can also be used to refer to any distinguishing characteristic. General overview. Historically, hallmarks were applied by a trusted party, the guardians of the craft, or, more recently, by an assay office. Hallmarks are a guarantee of certain purity or fineness of the metal, as determined by official metal assay testing. Distinguishment. Hallmarks are often confused with trademarks or maker's marks. A hallmark is not the mark of a manufacturer to distinguish his products from other manufacturers' products, that is the function of trademarks or maker's marks. To be a true hallmark, it must be the guarantee of an independent body or authority that the contents are as marked. Thus, a stamp of 925 by itself is not, strictly speaking, a hallmark, but is rather an unattested fineness mark. Prerequisites to hallmarking. Many nations require, as a prerequisite to official hallmarking, that the maker or sponsor itself marks upon the item a responsibility mark and a claim of fineness. Responsibility marks are also required in the US if metal fineness is claimed, even though there is no official hallmarking scheme there. Nevertheless, in nations with an official hallmarking scheme, the hallmark is only applied after the item has been assayed to determine that its purity conforms not only to the standards set down by the law but also with the maker's claims as to metal content. Systems. In some nations, such as the UK, the hallmark is made up of several elements, including a mark denoting the type of metal, the maker/sponsor's mark and the year of the marking. In England, the year of marking commences on the 19th of May, the feast day of St. Dunstan, patron saint of gold and silversmiths. In other nations, such as Poland, the hallmark is a single mark indicating metal and fineness, augmented by a responsibility mark, known as a sponsor's mark in the UK. Within a group of nations that are signatories to an international convention known as the Vienna Convention on the Control of the Fineness and the Hallmarking of Precious Metal Objects, additional, optional yet official, marks may also be struck by the assay office. These can ease import obligations among and between the signatory states. Signatory countries each have a single representative hallmark, which would be struck next to the convention mark that represents the metal and fineness. History. Ancient Byzantine hallmarks. The control or inspection of precious metals was an ancient concept of examination and marking, by means of inspection stamps, punch marks. The use of hallmarks, at first on silver, has a long history dating back to the 4th century AD. There is evidence of silver bars marked under authority of the Emperor Augustinian around AD 350, and represents the oldest known form of consumer protection. A series or system of 5 marks has been found on Byzantine silver dating from this period, though their interpretation is still not completely resolved. Late Middle Ages. From the late Middle Ages, hallmarking was administered by local governments through authorized assayers. These assayers examined precious metal objects, under the auspices of the state, before the object could be offered for public sale. By the age of the craft guilds, the authorized examiner's mark was the master's mark, which consisted frequently of his initials and/or the coat of arms of the goldsmith or silversmith. At one time, there was no distinction between silversmiths and goldsmiths, who were all referred to as orfèvre, the French word for goldsmith. The master craftsman was responsible for the quality of the work that left his atelier or workshop, regardless of who made the item. Hence the responsibility mark is still known today in French as le poinçon de maître, literally the maker's punch. In this period, fineness was more or less standardized in the major European nations, writ, France and England, at 20 carats for gold and 12 to 13 lots, 75% to 81%, for silver, but the standards could only be partly enforced, owing to the lack of precise analytical tools and techniques. France. Hallmarking is Europe's earliest form of consumer protection. Modern hallmarking in Europe appears first in France, with the Goldsmiths Statute of 1260 promulgated under Etienne Boileau, Provost of Paris, for King Louis IX. A standard for silver was thus established. In 1275, King Philip III prescribed, by royal decree, the mark for use on silver works, along with specific punches for each community's smiths. In 1313, his successor, Philippe IV the Fair, expanded the use of hallmarks to gold works. England. In 1300, King Edward I of England enacted a statute requiring that all silver articles must meet the sterling silver standard, 92.5% pure silver, and must be assayed in this regard by guardians of the craft who would then mark the item with a leopard's head. In 1327, King Edward III of England granted a charter to the Worshipful Company of Goldsmiths, more commonly known as the Goldsmiths Company, marking the beginning of the company's formal existence. This entity was headquartered in London at Goldsmiths Hall, from whence the English term hallmark is derived. In the UK, the use of the term hallmark was first recorded in this sense in 1721 and in the more general sense as a mark of quality in 1864. Switzerland. In 1424, the French Cardinal Jean de Broglie, after consulting a council of 8 master goldsmiths from Geneva, enacted a regulation on the purity and hallmarking of silver objects, following the French standards, for application in Geneva. Although gold was used for articles, the regulation was silent on standards and hallmarking for gold. In Switzerland today, only precious metal watch cases must be hallmarked. The hallmarking of other items including silverware and jewelry is optional. Augmentations in France and England. Modern hallmarks. In the modern world, in an attempt at standardizing the legislation on the inspection of precious metals and to facilitate international trade, in November 1972 a core group of European nations signed the Vienna Convention on the Control of the Fineness and the Hallmarking of Precious Metal Objects. Articles which are assayed and found by the qualifying office of a signatory country to conform to the standard, receive a mark, known as the Common Control Mark, CCM, attesting to the material's fineness. The multi-tiered motif of the CCM is the balance scales, superimposed, for gold, on 2 intersecting circles, for platinum, a diamond shape, and for silver a mark in the shape of the Latin letter M. This mark is recognized in all the other contracting states, including Austria, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, Great Britain, Hungary, Ireland, Israel, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Sweden, Switzerland and Ukraine. See links below. Other nations monitor the activities of the convention and may apply for membership. Complete international hallmarking has been plagued by difficulties, because even amongst countries which have implemented hallmarking, standards and enforcement vary considerably, making it difficult for one country to accept another's hallmarking as equivalent to its own. While some countries permit a variance from the marked fineness of up to 10 parts per thousand, others do not permit any variance, known as negative tolerance, at all. Many nations abide by the Vienna system and procedures are in place to allow additional nations to join the Vienna Convention. Similarly, with the consent of all the current member states, the terms of the convention may be amended. The most significant item currently up for debate is the recognition of palladium as a precious metal. Some member nations recognize palladium as a precious metal while others do not. Poland. Hallmarks for gold, palladium, platinum and silver from Poland. Official Polish hallmarks between 1963 and 1986. France. Official French hallmarks used between 1798 and 1972 for gold and silver. French mark head of horse for jewelry and watches from 18K gold made in the French provinces between 1838 and 1919. UK. The Hallmarking Act 1973 made Britain a member of the Vienna Convention as well as introducing marking for platinum, a recognized metal under the convention. All 4 remaining assay offices finally adopted the same date letter sequences. In 1999 changes were made to the UK hallmarking system to bring the system closer into line with the European Union, EU. Note that under this latest enactment, the date letter is no longer a compulsory part of the hallmark. A Legislative Reform Order, LRO, came into law on the 8th of February 2013, giving UK assay offices the legal right to strike hallmarks outside of UK territory. In July 2016, Birmingham Assay Office began striking Birmingham hallmarks in Mumbai, India, and further offshore offices are likely to be established. In March 2018, the British Hallmarking Council announced that UK assay office marks struck offshore must be distinguishable from those struck in the UK. It is likely that an offshore assay mark will have to be added to signify that the item was not assayed in the UK. Only London and Edinburgh assay offices now strike marks exclusively in the UK. As it now stands, the compulsory part of the UK hallmark consists of the sponsor or maker's mark, the assay office mark, and the standard of fineness, in this case silver, 925 parts in 1000. These are shown in the top of the two example hallmarks. The bottom example shows the extra marks that can also be struck, the line passant, indicating sterling silver, the date mark, lowercase a for 2000, and in this example, the millennium mark, which was only available for the years 1999 and 2000. The bottom example bears the Yorkshire Rose mark for the Sheffield Assay Office. The Hallmarking Act was amended in July 2009 to include palladium from January 2010. Switzerland. Although hallmarking in the Swiss territories dates back to Geneva in the 15th century, there was no uniform system of hallmarking in Switzerland until 1881. Before that time, hallmarking was undertaken at the local level by the Swiss cantons. With the introduction of federal hallmarking laws starting in 1881, increased uniformity was established. Under the current law, on all gold, silver, platinum or palladium watches cases made in Switzerland or imported into Switzerland, there shall be affixed, near the maker's responsibility mark and his indication of purity, the official hallmark, the head of a St. Bernard dog. Only precious metal watch cases must be hallmarked. Swiss hallmarking for other articles such as jewelry and cutlery is optional. In addition to the Swiss hallmark, all precious metal goods may be stamped with the common control mark of the Vienna Convention. Netherlands. The Netherlands, who are members of the International Hallmarking Convention, have been striking hallmarks since at least 1814. Like many other nations, the Netherlands require the registration and use of responsibility marks. However, perhaps somewhat unusual, there is a book published entitled Netherlands Responsibility Marks since 1797, in 3 volumes and in the English language, illustrating all the responsibility marks registered there since that time. This is significant since producers that exported precious metal goods to the Netherlands would have been required to register their marks. The Dutch government markets their assay services/office as the jewelry gateway in and to Europe. The Netherlands hallmarks are also recognized in other EU countries and thus can be sold in Austria, France, Ireland, Portugal, Spain and the United Kingdom without further testing. The Netherlands hallmarks are also recognized in Belgium, Denmark, Finland, and Sweden, which have voluntary hallmarking systems. One of the 2 Dutch assay offices, Waarborg Holland BV, is located in Gouda between the Amsterdam and Rotterdam airports. The other one is located in Yaoundé, called Edelmetaal Waarborg Nederland BV. The Netherlands recognizes platinum, gold, silver and palladium as precious metals. Marking techniques. Punching. Traditionally, the hallmarks are struck using steel punches. Punches are made in different sizes, suitable for tiny pieces of jewelry to large silver platters. Punches are made in straight shank or ring shank, the latter used to mark rings. The problem with traditional punching is that the process of punching displaces metal, causing some distortion of the article being marked. This means that refinishing of the article is required after hallmarking. For this reason, and that offcuts from sprues are often used for assay, many articles are sent unfinished to the assay office for assay and hallmarking. Laser marking. A new method of marking using lasers is now available, which is especially valuable for delicate items and hollowware, which would be damaged or distorted by the punching process. Laser marking also means that finished articles do not need to be refinished. Laser marking works by using high-power lasers to evaporate material from the metal surface. Two methods exist, 2D and 3D laser marking. 2D laser marking burns the outline of the hallmarks into the object, while 3D laser marking better simulates the marks made by punching. Methods of assay. Precious metal items of art or jewelry are frequently hallmarked, depending upon the requirements of the laws of either the place of manufacture or the place of import. Where required to be hallmarked, semi-finished precious metal items of art or jewelry pass through the official testing channels where they are analyzed or assayed for precious metal content. While different nations permit a variety of legally acceptable finenesses, the assayer is actually testing to determine that the fineness of the product conforms with the statement or claim of fineness that the maker has claimed, usually by stamping a number such as 750 for 18K gold on the item. In the past the assay was conducted by using the touchstone method, but currently, most often, it is done using X-ray fluorescence, XRF. XRF is used because this method is more exacting than the touchstone test. The most exact method of assay is known as fire assay or cupillation. This method is better suited for the assay of bullion and gold stocks rather than works of art or jewelry because it is a completely destructive method. Touchstone. The age-old touchstone method is particularly suited to the testing of very valuable pieces, for which sampling by destructive means, such as scraping, cutting or drilling, is unacceptable. A rubbing of the item is made on a special stone, treated with acids, and the resulting color compared to references. Differences in precious metal content as small as 10 to 20 parts per thousand can often be established with confidence by the test. It is not indicated for use with white gold, for example, since the color variation among white gold alloys is almost imperceptible. X-ray fluorescence. The modern X-ray fluorescence is also a non-destructive technique that is suitable for normal assaying requirements. It typically has an accuracy of 2 to 5 parts per thousand and is well suited to the relatively flat and large surfaces. It is a quick technique taking about 3 minutes, and the results can be automatically printed out by the computer. It also measures the content of the other alloying metals present. It is not indicated, however, for articles with chemical surface treatment or electroplated metals. Fire assay. The most elaborate, but totally destructive, assay method is the fire assay, or cupillation. As applied to gold-bearing metallics, as in hallmark assaying, it is also known as cupillation and can have an accuracy of 1 part in 10,000. In this process the article is melted, the alloys separated and constituents weighed. Since this method is totally destructive, when this method is employed for the assay of jewelry, it is done under the guise of random or selective sampling. For example, if a single manufacturer deposits a lot of rings or watch cases, while most are assayed using the non-destructive methods, a few pieces from the lot are randomly selected for fire assay. Other methods. There are methods of assay noted above which are more properly suited for finished goods, while other methods are suitable for use on raw materials before artistic workmanship has begun. Raw precious metals, bullion or metal stock, are assayed by the following methods. Silver is assayed by titration, gold is assayed by cupillation, and platinum is assayed by ICPO's spectrometry.